But it does mean that we should all search for opportunities to study. And when we have the opportunity to learn Torah, however we learn Torah, if we're participating in a class like this, or listening to the podcast, or watching a YouTube video, or personally, physically attending something, or opening up a book and studying ourselves, we really want to remember, I want God. And this is how I get him. So we are starting chapter 44. Wow, what an accomplishment. And 44 is basically continuing the flow from 41, 42, and 43. And in chapter 43, 41, and 42, we discussed the levels of fear, of awe, of subservience to God. And in 43, we start speaking about love. And we discussed at length 2 levels of what we call intellectual loves. We discussed a love we called Avas Olam, a love which comes from world, from our awareness of the world, from our awareness of God in the world, and an even higher love called Ahava Rabbah, which means a very great love. And this was a very great love. The lower, still, quite high love of looking at the world and contemplating the world and contemplating God within world means we put a lot of effort in it. That's important. And that created the love. The even higher love, the very great love, is something which, of course, a person works on themselves to attain that spiritual stature, works on themselves very hard to attain that spiritual stature. But when you're at that level, you don't then create this love. This love is beyond what a human can create. This love that we discussed at length last chapter is a gift from God. So we have the love coming from our awareness of God in the world, which we expend a lot of effort and create, and it's very special to expend this effort and create it. And we have the very high love, which is very special because it's a gift from God. Now in this chapter, we're going to be talking about a different type of loving God. Not a intellectually created love of God, but a love of God that we call a natural hidden love. In the Hebrew, we call it an ahava misuteres, which means an innate love buried in our soul. Now, we first discussed this concept of innate loves buried in our soul, chapters 18 through 25. And we discussed this at length, and we said in the core of every soul is in essence God. So it's almost like, if we will, self-love. My core identity is God. And therefore my natural being is love of God. That's love of self. And we discussed that from 18 to 25, and we said, wow, this is amazing. How do I get it? Do I create it? No, I don't create it. God gave it to me. It's embedded in my soul. I don't need to create it. This is wonderful. So how do I access it? So we explained then deeply at length that we access it by looking at the world and recognizing that any time I transgress, this is a potentially very dangerous situation. Anytime I would deviate from God's will, I'm separating myself from him. And if my relationship with God is critically important to me, separating myself from him is very significant. It's scary. And therefore this elicits a sense of no, self-sacrifice. I'm in danger. I can't. It's not worth it. I care more about my relationship with God. And that feeling of the danger, of the self-sacrifice, that's what is the key that unlocks this natural love. So again, I don't create it. It's embedded in my soul. I think thoughts, but I'm not thinking thoughts to create the love. I'm thinking thoughts to uncover the love. And the basic thought that we developed at length over 7 chapters, again, is anytime I'm in a situation of danger, anytime I'm in a situation of danger in terms of my relationship to God, anytime I sense there could be a severing of my relationship to God, this elicits my self-sacrifice, my desire for God, and unlocks this love. And that's what we discussed in chapter 18 to 25. Now in chapter 44, we're going back to this love, but we're talking about a different type of natural love we were given as a gift. Meaning, I almost envision it like, this is my vision. If someone gave you this beautiful gift box and you're so excited, it's a gift, gifts are exciting, and you open it up and you see something beautiful in it and you're so excited. And then as you're enjoying this beautiful thing, you notice a smaller, maybe it's jewelry, a smaller box that you missed because you saw something, the bigger item took up the space. And you see this smaller box and you open it up and it's something far more precious. And it was also in that same gift box, but you didn't notice it at first. It's smaller, it's in the side, and it's actually much more precious, much more valuable, bringing you even more, a much greater joy. And that's what we're saying now. That embedded in our soul, in every one of our souls, if you're aware of God, if you feel your love, doesn't make a difference. You're a Jew, you have a soul. Embedded in the soul is this love for God. And the big obvious present is what we discussed in chapter 18 through 25. And now we're probing more and we're finding other gifts within that big box. And these gifts are actually even more precious. Meaning the love that we're now going to discuss, which is part of the natural, innate love, because I'm a Jew and it's in my soul, is an even more powerful love than the very powerful love we discussed at length for 7 chapters from 18 to 25. Now that was amazing. And that was like, oh my gosh, when you have the sense of separation from God and the danger of separation, the self-sacrifice that you will not ever want to be severed from God. And then this enormous love comes out, and it's such an enormous love that it melts away all the evil, and you come across like you're beyond connected to God and no barriers exist, and literally all evil just melts. That's a really powerful love. I mean, of course, it's from God. God made. But we're going to discuss now, these loves are even more powerful. They go even further. And it's amazing to think that these are, again, gifts. None of us have to create them. None of us could create them. They're literally gifts embedded in our soul. But we do have to work, of course, because if we didn't have to work, then we'd all be walking around feeling all this love. And obviously we're not, always. So the work is thinking the thoughts the Rebbe is going to explain to access the love. So in a sense, as the Rebbe is going to say, we're combining some element of the love from world and some element from that intense love that we discussed last chapter. Now, both of those were intellectually created loves. This is not an intellectually created love. It is not in the same class. This is a love embedded in my soul, what we call Kabbalistically Ava Misuteres, the secret, hidden, innate love every Jew has for God. But like the love from world, I'm working for it. Like the very intense love, ultimately it's a gift from God. So this is a synergy of my work and God's gift. So let's read some of this inside. We're at the beginning of chapter 44. V'hine, kol madregas ahava mibeis madregos elu. All of these levels of love, from these 2 levels that we discussed last chapter, Abba Rabba B'avas Olam, the love that's very intense, very great, and the love that comes from our awareness of God in the world. Nechalekes l'kama b'chinus madregos l'ein kates. Subdivise into infinite levels. What the Rebbe is saying here is, last chapter we spoke about 2 levels of love. Love from world, from analyzing and understanding God's presence within the world, and this very intense love that's totally beyond world. We made it sound like 2 levels. The Rebbe says it's myriads of levels. It's so many levels, we're calling them infinite. Because within each of those categories, there's many, 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 many sub-levels. Each person according to his ability. Meaning, as the Rebbe is going to say, loving God is not like lighting the candles for the Shabbat, for the Sabbath. Because every single one of us can take a match, take a lighter, light a candle, and make a blessing. Every one of us can give charity. Put a coin in a charity box, write a check, swipe a credit card. We can all give charity. We can all take our clothing and have it checked if it's a mixture of wool and linen. We can all separate our meat and our dairy. So in the actions of serving God, total equality. The greatest, highest soul and the most common soul have the exact same obligations. The most simple Jew in the world, when I say simple, I don't mean intellectually, I mean spiritually. The Jew whose soul descended to the lowest levels. All of our souls start off on a very, 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 very high plane, highest level, highest world. But they all travel. And the Jew whose soul traveled every one of the levels to the lowest level of the lowest spiritual world, which means roughly 3,600 levels. And the greatest souls, Moses and Aaron and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they all have the exact same obligations in terms of the commandments. Meaning every single Jew has to keep the same Sabbath, the same Shabbos. Every single Jew has to keep the same kosher, has to put on tefillin if he's a man, has to light the candles for the Shabbat, cannot gossip, cannot steal. The laws are equal. Meaning even the Jew who's traveled the most and his soul went so far down and it's so covered over and buried, has enough spiritual stamina to do every one of the 613 commandments and all the thousands and thousands and thousands of rabbinic commandments. And no one is exempt. But in terms of the commandments of loving and fearing God, we all have the obligation to fulfill that commandment. We all have to love and fear God. But how much you're going to love and fear God, how deeply you're going to love and fear God, how high your soul is going to soar in love and fearing God, that's very different for every person. And that simplest Jew, whose soul is the most covered over, still has to love and fear God. But a very basic love and fear of God will be wonderful. And that's great, and that's all he needs. And that would not be good enough for a higher soul meaning a soul that started off on a higher world, a higher dimension in the world, traveled less, whose spiritual abilities are more easily accessible. Such a person, possessing such a soul, if their love and fear is like that very, very simple Jew, no. You didn't fulfill, you're not loving. What do you mean I'm not loving? I mean, of course I'm loving God. Of course I'm fearing God. You are. But compared to what you're capable of, that's not called love. That's not called fear for you. So this is the point the Rebbe is making here. That last chapter, when we spoke about loving God, inspired by looking and understanding how God is within the fabric of the world, loving God beyond that, those broad categories have many, many, many sub-levels. And where are you supposed to strive to? As high, as far as your soul abilities. As the Rebbe explains further. And that's why loving and fearing God is called the hidden elements. Those that are hidden to God, exclusive to God. Only God knows how much you can love him. Only God knows how much you can fear him. How much you can keep kosher? We all have the same obligation. How much you can keep the Shabbos? We all have the same obligation. How much you can dress modestly? We all have the same obligation. How much you can love and fear God? Only God knows how much you can love him and how much you can fear him. So we all have the obligation to try, to strive, to push, but we'll all reach a different level because it has a lot to do with the source of our soul. So loving and fearing God is called what's hidden, what's secret. Only God knows. Studying the Torah and keeping all the other commandments, that's revealed because it's all the same. We all have to study Torah. We all have to pray. We all have to give charity. We all have to do all the commandments. And no one can say, my soul is too low for this one. No. Even the lowest of the lowest of the lowest soul has enough spiritual stamina to serve God completely. But in the realm of love and fear, it's dependent on the height of your soul, how far you're going to go. Because when we're talking about the action of serving God, the Torah and the mitzvahs, it's one Torah, it's one law for all of us. We're all equal. We all have the same obligation. But this is not so in terms of love and fear of God. Because love and fear is based on how much you have da'as of God. Now, da'as simply means knowledge, but we actually discussed the term da'as a lot in the beginning of chapter 43, and we explained that da'as means connectivity. In a Kabbalistic sense, this term da'as, which loosely translated it means knowledge, means knowing God, being connected, being fused, being one. And every one of our souls has a different depth of potential, of da'as, of connectivity, of fusion with God. And as per your da'as, as per your soul's ability to fuse with God, that's how much you can love and fear. And therefore, that's how much you have to love and fear. If God gave you the sensitivity, go with it. And if you can't attain these high levels, no, that's okay. If you don't have the ability, it's okay. If you have the ability, it's not okay. And you got to work. If you don't have the ability because you're striving and striving, but you're not accessing, maybe you don't have this ability. And then that's okay. What we were saying here is really like introducing the rest of the chapter, because we're talking about loves created. And the Rebbe's point is we can't all attain the same degree within created loves. We have different abilities to love based on our soul, based on the height of our soul, based on how much our soul traveled, based on primarily our da'as faculty, how much connectivity I can have with God, how much I can fuse with God. And that's going to determine how high my loving God stimulated by my awareness of him in the world. Am I loving God with this level of such an intense love that God's giving it as a gift? Where I could go in both of those. Is it equal? Not at all. But the Rebbe's going to say for the rest of the chapter, there are things we all can attain. There are very, very powerful loves that are completely democratic, that every single Jew can have, no matter who he is, no matter how far his soul traveled, because these are, as I was saying before, ahavos misutaros. These are innate, literally the translation is secret loves, hidden loves, loves buried in the soul of every single Jew. So even if your soul traveled till the end, even if your soul is considered on the lowest level of the lowest world, buried in that soul is this unbelievable love of God. There's actually two. So these two unbelievable levels of love of God that we're going to discuss for the rest of the chapter. Because these two loves are innate. So it's impossible to say, no, this Jew can't do that one. Like, he's not spiritually sensitive enough. You know, his soul traveled a lot. It's okay. He can't do it. No such thing. No such thing, because this love and the next one we're going to discuss too are buried in your soul. And they're buried in the soul of every single Jew. So I'm not going to say this is comfort if you can't achieve the high levels we discussed last chapter, because it's not really even an issue of comfort. Every person strives, following the guidance, following the thoughts the Rebbe presented last chapter, and hopefully each one of us can attain some level of this love. And whatever our level is, as long as we're sincerely striving, that's wonderful, and that's good, and that's great, and that's amazing. And we all can access beyond the natural love we discussed in chapters 18 through 25. Now we're opening, as I said, even more precious boxes we didn't notice before. They were smaller. They're so precious. Even more intense love, far more intense than we ever imagined, are the loves buried in our soul. And we're starting now talking about the first of these two. But there's a love that's comprised of both aspects of that very intense love and that love which is elicited by world. Now, why we're saying this love is comprised of both loves, what actually, as we're saying, it's a very different love, because those two are intellectually created loves, and this love is what's buried in our soul. And our goal by thinking thoughts is to uncover it. We're not creating it. Those two loves are more on the side of creation through the mind. And this is the mind is giving me keys to uncover the love I already have. So why am I saying it's comprised of those loves? So what the Rebbe means, as I mentioned before, is there's elements of both loves in this love. Like the lower love, which again is not so low, loving God by feeling God's presence in the world. That's a love that I created by a lot of work. And these loves, even though they're natural and they're embedded in my soul, I'm going to do a lot of intellectual work to uncover them. So that's similar to that first love, seeing, being aware of, contemplating on God and world, and because of that, eliciting a love. Like the higher love, the Ahava Rabbah love, we said in essence, the Ahava Rabbah love is a gift. And these loves, in essence, are gifts. These are gifts God embedded in our soul. We're very gifted. As a Jew, we're gifted with a soul. We're gifted with enormous powers in our soul. We're gifted with belief of God in our soul. We're gifted with self-sacrifice for God in our soul. We're gifted with fear of God, and we're gifted with love of God. And now we're going to explore, we already again, chapters 18 to 25, explored one level of the gift of love. And now in this chapter, we're going to explore two more gifts. Gifts. Every one of us has them. Gifts of love for God that I'm enriched with, that I'm blessed with, that's innate to my soul. Now this is equal for all of us. Just like we were saying, every Jew, no matter who he is, has an obligation to keep the Shabbat, to keep the Sabbath, to keep the Shabbos. Every Jew has an obligation to keep kosher. Every Jew has an obligation not to steal and not to murder and not to gossip. Every Jew, so to speak, has an obligation to access these loves. Because every single Jew can, because we have them already. They're a gift. We just have to think the thoughts that will uncover them. These loves we inherited in the merit of our forefathers. What this means is, until Abraham, until Avraham, souls were given to people by those found worthy to bear them. Meaning, every single human, this is pre-Avraham, pre-Abraham, every single human was evaluated before he was born. And since for God, time is not a factor, God's beyond time, past, present, and future are the same. So God could see how much would this person utilize soul. And if he would be worthy of soul, he was given one. Does that mean his parents have one? No. Does that mean his children will have one? No. It was very, very individualized on a person's worth. And then we had Abraham. And then we had Isaac. And then we had Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And because of their enormous merit, that each one of them was called, collectively, God's chariot. Chariot meaning, like a car, goes where you direct it. The chariot of God is so nullified, just does exactly whatever is God's will. So this tremendous nullification to God, this complete transparency to God's will, in the merit of that, all of their children, and only their children, would have soul. So until Abraham, it was open. It depended on personal worth. After Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it was closed. It's to every Jew, no matter what type of person they're going to be, and it's only to the Jews. And that's what the Rebbe means here by saying that we all have this love in the merit of our patriarchs. Because since they served God in the fashion they did, every one of their descendants has a soul. And buried in the soul, the core of the soul, is God. And therefore are these loves for God. Because as I said, in a sense, it's self-love. It's the ultimate self of the Jew, is the Jew's oneness with God. And therefore, it's the ultimate natural expression of love, is to love God as the very core of self. So therefore, the Rebbe says, this is equally accessible for every Jew. We all have it. And we all have it for the same reason. Because we come from very good stock. From Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, very, very good stock. And in their merit, we all have a soul. And because we all have soul, we all have this ability. So now we're going to discuss the first of these two levels of those very beautiful, smaller gift box within the natural, innate love for God that we all possess. V'hainu, mashakasav haZohar al-pasuk. So this is based on what the Zohar is the most foundational Kabbalistic work. So what the Zohar explains on a verse, Nafshi avisicha bailala. Nafshi, my soul, avisicha, I long for you, balayla, at night. So what is this meaning, my soul, I long for you in the night? So the Zohar explains. So that's a verse from Isaiah, from Yeshaya. And the Zohar explains on it. The Yarchim, these words are going to sound different. These words are Aramaic. The Zohar is primarily Aramaic. The Yarchim l'kutchabrichu, richimusa de nafshe v'rucha. That a person loves God, a love of soul, a love of nefesh of soul, a love of ruach of soul. The soul loves God. Kema disdabku ileim begufa. Just like a love of the soul as it's attached to the body. V'gufa rachim lon chulei. And the body loves them. So this is sort of confusing. What's the Zohar saying? So to understand what the Zohar is saying, let's look at this verse from Isaiah, from Yeshaya, and understand what it's saying. Nafshi, my soul, avisicha, I long for you, balayla at night. What does this mean, my soul, I long for you? I have my soul. I'm longing. You long for something you feel you don't have. My soul, I have. So the Rebbe is saying, based on the Zohar, the Zohar is really saying, the Rebbe is explaining for us the Zohar, that when Yeshaya says my soul, this is metaphor for God. Meaning, just as there's a relationship of a soul and a body, there's a relationship of God and the Jewish people. God is like the soul of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are, so to speak, like the body of God. So just as a soul and body have a relationship, and the body needs a soul, the soul gives the body life. And if the soul would leave the body would be like, oh, I need life, I need life, I need my soul, I need life. Now, we don't usually walk around thinking, help, I need life, because we have life. But if for some reason we felt our life slipping away, it would be this desperate plea of life. In other words, if I said, tell me a pleasure you have, an indulgence, something you enjoy, I would be surprised if anyone said to me, life. You might say a certain food or a perfume, a walk outside, beautiful weather, clothing, a nap. Life is like the constant. Life is like the given. But as the Rebbe is going to explain, it is the given, it is the constant. And therefore we don't think about it. But if something threatened that, like if a person was very weak, if a person was sick, if a person was in a situation where their life was fading, their life was in danger, that would be the most significant thing they'd want in the world, and nothing else really matters. You give me chocolate, I want life. You give me jewelry, I need life. Don't give me jewelry, give me life. Don't give me chocolate, give me life. Don't give me, a new this or a fancy that. Give me life. Because there's no desire or need, or if we could call it pleasure. There's no pleasure deeper than the pleasure for life, but it's a constant, so we don't think about it. It's like a child that takes their parents for granted. They don't think about their parents in terms of the special people in their life when they're a child, because they're just always there. Thank God, as it should be. And sometimes when they get older, then they have a little more perspective on it. And not only children, very often people that are constants in our life, in a sense, of course, we love them deeply and appreciate them. In a sense, we don't think about them at all because they're constants. So life is the most constant thing we have. And therefore, we don't usually stop, think, and appreciate. But there's nothing we desire more than life. So the Rebbe is saying that this verse is saying, based on the Zohar explaining, Nafshi, my soul, I really mean God, because God's the ultimate soul of the Jewish people. My soul, I long for you. At night, I'm thinking about you. I want you. I need the relationship with you, just as if you can envision a person who's very, 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 very hungry. Not like, you're watching your weight so you go to bed like, a little hungry. Don't wait, by the morning you're full, like it's over. Someone who unfortunately in a situation where they really don't have food and they're really hungry, that person can't really sleep properly, even though they're probably tired also, but they're hungry, so the hunger will wake them up. So this person is saying, God, I want you. I can't sleep at night. I sleep comfortably. You're tired. You're going to have to function the next day. I can't sleep. I need you. I'm craving you. I'm feeling weak or needy for you. I can't just sleep. I need you. I got to wake up. And how do I get God? Study Torah. God is in the Torah. God gave us the gift of self in the Torah. The first word of the Ten Commandments is I, a very fancy word for I. Usually in the Hebrew, I is ani. In the Ten Commandments, it's a different word for I, anochi. And anochi is an acrostic for 4 Aramaic words. It's 4 letters. Anochi, ana nafshi kesavas yahavis. I put myself in the writings. So anochi, I put myself in the writings. When God gave us the Torah, God gave us himself. God put himself in the Torah. So therefore, I can't sleep. I need God. You need God. Get up and study Torah, because that's how you have him. Any thoughts on any of this before we continue? I know I've just been talking for a long time here. Any thoughts, any questions? Okay.
Earl?
Yes, Esther?
Yes. So, do we all have the ability to be able to tell what level our soul is at and what we really need to do as far as this level of love is concerned? Like when we're really on the right track according to our ability?
That's a great
Are
question.
there those who know that?
So in terms of this current level we're discussing, we all have this ability because we actually all already have this love. You could say, I never felt it. Okay, so we have to work on it. We have to work on uncovering it. In terms of the loves of last chapter, the Rebbe said there are many levels to those loves. So the implication is, at least for sure, for the loving God from contemplating the world and sensing how God is within world, every one of us has some ability, but we all have different abilities. So can we truly know how great our ability is? I think the point is we're supposed to walk the walk that the Rebbe laid out for us. We're supposed to think the thoughts. And then each one of us will have a different intensity of love that's created from those thoughts. So we're going to think the same thoughts. And it's not that the thoughts are hard to understand. I mean, we chewed over them last chapter. I think they were all very clear. But one person could think deeply into those thoughts and achieve a certain intensity of love with God. And another person could achieve something far greater or far less. Because the Rebbe said it's based on the da'as factor of your soul. It's based on how much your soul has a sensitivity to integrate, to internalize what you're studying so that the knowledge becomes you. And when the knowledge of God becomes you, that's what gives birth. That's what allows these emotions to flow. So as long as a person is sincerely trying, whatever love they create, that's the love they're capable of creating. And it's not a competition. And the Rebbe is saying it's a secret. He quoted a verse that says the secret's for God, meaning every single one of us, if we all work the same way, we will all achieve something different. And that's fine. And I don't know how much love you're feeling, and you don't know how much love I'm feeling, and that's fine. God knows, true. But as long as God knows you're trying, you're doing what he's asking, what you achieve, that's based on the abilities he gave you. It's fine. As long as you're trying, it's fine. Now we're talking about a love that it's no question, the Rebbe is saying. The loves I taught you last chapter, maybe they're questioned. Maybe it depends on your ability. This love is no question. Every single one of us can access this love. And even though it might sound very intense, like it is very intense, literally feeling God is my life. And as I crave life, that's how I crave God. That's really intense. But this love we all can have because God already gave it to us. God created this love. It's embedded in the core of our soul. So when we think these thoughts, as we think them sincerely and think them again and think them again and think them again, as we really let our mind be enveloped by these thoughts, we like slip into the thoughts and just really let it surround us and really let these thoughts fill ourselves, every one of us can access this love. Now, again, might be different in terms of duration and intensity based on other factors of self, but we can all get this love because we all have it already, because God created it and God embedded it in our soul.
Right, but we, this is how I'm understanding it. We're all, as it should be, we all have different abilities, but can we really tell what our own ability is?
We cannot know what our ability is, but we, as long as we know we're sincerely trying, we trust that God values the sincerity of our efforts, and what comes forth is the love that we can access. But a person wouldn't be able to, not people like us. We wouldn't be able to evaluate and say, well, I achieved this level, but really, if I really, really, really pushed, I could get that level, so I should really strive. Obviously, very great holy tzaddikim, they probably can. But for us, what's required from us is to sincerely try and to trust that the love that's evoked is the love that we are capable of. Which doesn't mean then we're off the hook. Obviously, we keep trying. We keep trying. But we don't bash ourselves if, I don't know, I think this love's supposed to feel more than it feels. I'm really trying.
Well, what I'm saying is then we're not really knowing where our abilities lie.
True. Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any other thoughts on this? Okay. So let's read the Rebbe explaining this. So when it says, my soul, I long for you, meaning if you're not reading the words too carefully, you would translate nafshi avisicha, my soul longs, or my soul longs for you. My soul longs for you. My soul longs for God. But that's not what the word's saying. Nafshi, my soul, avisicha, I long for you. So again, careless reading, my soul longs for God, for you, for God. Careful reading, my soul, I long for you. I long for my soul, which the Zohar means. My soul refers to God. So why are we calling God our soul? And what do we gain from that image of like the soul to the body, God to us? So this is what the Rebbe now explains. Kiloimar, meaning to say, Mipnei she'ata havaya nafshi. Every single one of us is supposed to envision this. You, God, are my soul. What do you mean my soul? My life, my core, what I really am. My soul is my life, is the life of my body. God, you are my soul. You are every one of our souls. You are my life. V'chayai hamitim. You are my real life. My life is you. If I long for life, I long for you. If I want life, I want you. If I crave life, I crave you. L'kach avisicha. Because you're my life, that's why I desire you. Perush, me to say, shani mita'ev v'ta'ev lecha, that I'm desiring you. And the Alter Rebbe is very precise in his words, and he used here two different words that both mean desire. Like, I desire you. To me, this is really, really intense. This is a very strong desire. Like a person that desires life. Now, when do you desire life? Well, when you're weak. When you're afflicted. When a person's, God forbid, sick. When a person's, God forbid, weak. When a person's, God forbid, in a situation where he feels his life leaving him, he desires life. Because we all desire life. We all always desire life, but we never desire life because we always have life. So you don't think you want life. You might think you want food or clothing or more food or better food or different food or more clothing or better clothing or any of the other things. Any other the trappings. But the core, life, I have life. So it's not on my wish list. But the Rebbe is saying it's not on your wish list because you have it. But if you were in a situation where you didn't have it, it would be number 1 and number 2 and number 3 and number 4. It would be the wish list. Because there's nothing more than life. Now, thank God, hopefully no one here has ever been in a situation where they can say, oh yeah, I remember, like, hopefully this should not ring a bell. Hopefully we should never be in a situation that we can resonate where we just wanted life. But obviously we understand that. We could look back historically at the Holocaust or many other situations where you see how people, what they did just to live. That was the goal. That was the aspiration, life. If you're healthy, if you're a healthy person, you want life, and no matter what, that's what you want. So the Rebbe is saying, yes, it's a constant, and therefore we don't realize how much we desire it. And if a person was, God forbid, in a situation where they felt they were losing it, there's nothing more that they want than life. And that's God, because God is our life. So a person is weak and sick, he's desiring that his soul, that his life should come back to him. Kishir mishnaso. I'm sorry, I skipped a line. V'chein kishu hulech lishon. Just like if a person goes to sleep. Well, a person definitely hopes and desires and wants that he should wake up the next morning. You know, you're going to sleep, and of course, we know sleep is 1/60th, our sages say sleep is 1/60th of death. So a person, if they had a question in their mind, they definitely would very, very much want that they're going to wake up the next morning, because that's more important than anything else. That's life. Kach. So just as a person desires life more than he desires anything else, Ani mis'ai v'ta'ev l'orin sof baruch hu. I get it. I get that life is God. Again, this is the parallel metaphor we're presenting here. God to the Jew is like the soul, the life to the body. The body ultimately desires life, desires that soul, desires that life. And we ultimately desire God as our life, because God is the soul to the body of the Jewish people. God is the life of the Jew. So if I desire life, I desire God. And if I don't desire life, the Rebbe is saying, it's just because it was never threatened. There was never a situation where you questioned it. It was always there. But if there ever would be a situation where that was, God forbid, the question mark, you know, you want to live. You desire life. And life is God, because God is our life. So when I get this, I want God. And this person in this chapter who got it, who's thinking, I want God, this is the true life. This is the ultimate life. This is my true life. So, lamshicha b'kirbi, I want that inside of me. I want God. I want my soul. I want my life. Now, how am I going to get God? By involving myself in Torah. Because as we said, when God gave us the Torah, God gave us himself. He put himself in the Torah. He put himself in all of the Torah. So whatever part of Torah you like, relates to you, you enjoy, if it's law, if it's Agadita, the Midrashim, Chumash, Torah, the prophets, Talmud, Chassidut, whatever it is, God's in there. As you're ingesting Torah, and literally I use the word ingesting, because Torah is the only food for our soul. We can do commandments all day long, and hopefully we do, but they never feed our soul one drop. They help our soul, they protect our soul, but the only food for our soul is Torah, because within Torah, there's God. As I'm ingesting the Torah, I'm ingesting God. And in all levels of Torah, as I take in the Torah, I take in God. So if I'm desiring life, desiring God, the source of life, desperate for life, wanting to bring this life inside of me, I want to learn Torah. B'hakitzi mishnasi b'layla. And therefore, I can't sleep soundly at night. I wake up at night to study Torah. Remember, the original verse from Isaiah, from Yeshaya, was Nafshi avisicha balayla. My soul, decoded, God, avisicha, I long for you. I long for you because you're my life, and I want life. I want you. Balayla, at night. I can't sleep soundly. I'm waking up. I gotta learn. I gotta connect to you. I gotta have more of you. As the Rebbe says, Doraisa v'kuchabricha kulochat. Because Torah and God are absolutely one. So when I get Torah, I get God. So this is meant to be very practical, and there's two things you can take from this. Now, why I say this is meant to be very practical, everything, of course, is meant to be practical. But the whole point the Rebbe was making in the beginning of this chapter was we learned about a lot of very high, beautiful, amazing loves, and maybe you can achieve them, and maybe you can't. And as Esther was questioning, well, how do we know? We don't know. We try. But this, the Rebbe is saying, this is how the Rebbe introduced this love. This, every single one can achieve because you already have it. It's embedded in your soul. So there's two practical points we're supposed to walk away with from this. One is, wow, I didn't know how powerful my soul is. I didn't know how much I really love God this intently in my soul. Let me explore this. Let me try to reframe my thinking. God is my life. That's in essence. If I said so many words that it's hard to get the point, this is the point. God is my life. I want life. I want God. And if you just let that thought mull in your brain, God is my life. I want life. I want God. God is life, and I want life. I want God. And as you keep thinking that thought, it should naturally unlock the love you have. Because again, you're not trying to create the love. You have the love. You're trying to uncover the love you have. You're trying to unwrap the package. And how do I unwrap it? By these thoughts. God is life. I want life. I want God. That was one very practical takeaway we're supposed to have from these words. The other one is the importance of studying Torah, which doesn't mean that we have to wake up in the middle of the night and study, because we probably don't get enough sleep as it is. But it does mean that we should all search for opportunities to study. And when we have the opportunity to learn Torah, however we learn Torah, if we're participating in a class like this, or listening to a podcast, or watching a YouTube video, or personally, physically attending something, or opening up a book and studying ourselves, we really want to remember, I want God. And this is how I get him. Because, sometimes you can learn and, whatever. It was nice or it wasn't nice. It inspired me. It didn't inspire me. I was bored. I got it. I didn't get it. But deeper than any of that, I want God. I'm learning Torah because that's how I get God. And when you keep that in mind, it fuels you to keep learning. I got it. I didn't get it. I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. Doesn't make a difference. I got God. In essence, in core, I'm learning Torah, I'm getting God. And that's the point. So as the Rebbe says, K'moshe Kasuv HaZohar, as is written in the Zohar, we're going back now to the Zohar. Sham, in this place, and explaining this concept of Nafshi Avisicha Balayla, my soul, meaning God. I long for you. I want you because you're my life. Balayla, that's why I can't sleep at night, because I want you. So I'm going to wake up at night and study instead of sleeping, because sleep, whatever. But Torah, that's you. So this is what the Zohar says. That because of a person's love for God, he needs to get up in the night. Like he slept a little bit, he was exhausted, he slept a few hours, he gets up in the middle of the night. And this is what people used to do. They would get up in the middle of the night to study Torah. Traditionally, it was a at midnight situation till the morning. To try to have service of God until the morning. Now we could say, oh my, wow. Imagine if a person went to bed at 9 and got up at 11:30 and he can't sleep. He just got to study and he just studies for the rest of the night. You could say, not our pay grade. Maybe not, but that's okay. I don't think the takeaway has to be that we should have to wake up in the middle of the night and study till the morning. because we probably wouldn't function the next day and it wouldn't work for us. But it can be when I have the opportunity, I want to study, and I want to study with an understanding that the most important thing I'm gaining is God. And because that's so important, I'm not going to say, well, if I have the opportunity, I'm going to create the opportunity. I'm going to make sure I study. And I'm going to make sure I study something every single day. I'm going to study because I need God. And as I study, I get God. And that is the first of the 2 levels of natural love that we're going to discuss in this chapter. And in quite a while, we will continue the class and we will do the second natural love, another jewelry box hidden in that big present we started unwrapping in chapter 18. And that love's even more intense. But I think that this love gives us a lot of room for thought and a lot of spiritual work. Does someone have something?